Welcome back to Network and Chill. I am your co-host Red, joined with Rick today, and really excited to get back to it. Great conversation. Kentucky entrepreneur here in the city, and I think over the next couple months we're gonna pick up with some busy things coming up. Got a great event, intro to golf and a social event here at Audubon Country Club. So check it out and go register now. And then this fall, in person, Stacy Spikes from Movie Pass is coming to Louisville. So tap into that. I'm really excited for some upcoming opportunities here to connect back in person, Rick.
Man, I'm excited, bro. Yeah, as we round and get into the fall and get back to our in-person events, man, and as you said, Stacy Spikes coming through and the golf event coming up. I think that a lot of people have an appetite for golf, and I'm glad that we're doing this event to kind of get some people involved.
Absolutely. And then speaking of that, I'm excited for our guest today, and I'll let you do the introduction, but I think we'll get into it in the conversation. But you talk about golf, athletes, sports, and entrepreneurship. It's so many things that intertwine there, and I'm really excited to hop into the conversation today.
Yeah, man. So today, I'm excited to introduce and welcome Cal Green, the visionary founder and CEO of Handle Global. Cal is at the forefront of transforming healthcare through advanced supply chain solutions. Under his leadership, Handle has developed a revolutionary capital cycle management platform, a comprehensive system designed to enhance the efficiency, transparency, and strategic decision-making across healthcare systems. Cal's expertise and innovation have not only positioned Handle as a leader in healthcare analytics, but also earned it the 2021 MedTech Breakthrough Award for the best visualization solution. Today, he joins us to share his journey, the challenges of navigating the complex healthcare sector, and his vision for a more connected and efficient supply chain. What's up, Kyle?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Doing great, man. Thank you for taking some time today.
Yeah, thanks for that crazy intro. It made it sound so good.
I mean, it's really it's facts. We've been from a distance and watching a lot of the work what you've been doing, and most recently, we had Vincent Shea from Cypress Capital Partners, and really got to talk about this the work and how he connected with you, and so to kind of get hop into the conversation today. I would love to, for the maybe the audience who does not know, give us a quick this overview of Hando and maybe the mission.
Yeah. So Handle's based here in Louisville, Kentucky, where you guys are, which is awesome to be neighbors. Even though I know you have a broad reach, it's just awesome to be in the same hometown. Yeah. So Handle Global is a healthcare analytics company. You mentioned that in the intro. We've built capital cycle management. We call it CCM for short, and that's where we're focusing a lot of our efforts right now. We also have a marketplace and do some work with the government too that has warehousing and some sort of heavier logistics behind the scenes on that part of the business. But capital cycle management, I think, is what we'll talk about more today. So that's basically trying to help folks correct any data issues they have around high dollar items. So any high dollar item in a hospital system or other provider type would be things like MRIs and CTs and big iron is what they call that, all the way down to smaller medical devices. So the dollar threshold typically in a health system that would be defined as capital would be anything that's above $5,000. And it's a lot. So in healthcare, just in the US, it's north of $100 billion a year in spend on capital items. And globally, it's a lot bigger than that. So we're trying to basically work on an area that has had some data problems, and we're trying to clean and normalize all that data to make it so as you're making those really expensive decisions, you can do it with as much intelligence as possible and try to navigate a process that's usually pretty complex because those items touch lots of different departments within a hospital. So you have quite a few stakeholders involved, finance and supply chain and biomedical engineering and clinical departments. And so we're trying to unite all those folks, harmonize the data that kind of underpins those decisions and come up with really the first operating system for capital and healthcare.
I mean, I love that, and such a strong mission. And I think, I did some research and heard some stories, right? And so before we get too far into like the company building piece, Kyle, I think it's so important to kind of go back a little bit, because I think, Ricky and I always talk about having corporate experience and how that can lead into entrepreneurship. And, prior to this, you were a VP at Norton Healthcare, I think leading like the pediatric line of service. And mistake me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of how the core idea of Handle came through. Can you take us back through that story and your uncoverings? What kind of led you to start Handle?
Yeah, sure. So I did have quite a bit of experience inside of health systems before coming to the outside and trying to affect the industry a little bit more broadly. But yeah, inside health systems, I started out at Johns Hopkins Health System in Baltimore, was an administrative fellow there. So basically see how the puzzle pieces fit together. It's a rotation-based program. You see how supply chain and finance and strategy and operations, and you go on helicopter rides with the trauma team. You go to the back end of the IT server rooms and see how that works. And you sit in boardrooms with the executive team and see how that works. So everything from high level strategy down to really granular operations. Then went to China actually for a little while with Johns Hopkins International, and opened a hospital in Shanghai, which was a wild experience in itself. And then came back to the States and worked at Norton. So you mentioned the VP of Pediatric Service line. So I was at Norton Healthcare here in town, and did the children's hospital work and did operations for a little while, and then strategy and business development. Then went to Phoenix for a bit and was at Phoenix Children's Hospital in Arizona, was senior VP of operations and then chief strategy officer and senior VP of business development. So got to see for-profit hospitals, nonprofit hospitals, international, domestic, large systems, small systems, academic medical centers, community hospitals, kind of the full range. And then started this company about 10 years ago now.
So, man, I want to jump back real quick. Shout out to you and being a fellow Johns Hopkins alumni. And
Nice.
yeah, man. Yeah, I graduated in 2014. I did my master's there. So, but I wanted to double tap on that and talk about that experience and how that network led to you going to Shanghai. So could you give us a little bit of insight on, that experience and how it led to Shanghai and what was it like, working in Shanghai? I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So at Johns Hopkins, when you do an administrative fellowship, you get assigned a mentor, an executive who's your primary mentor, and mine was a lady named Pamela Paulk, who was amazing. She's the VP of HR for the system. She's actually now the CEO of Johns Hopkins International. But at the time, I was at a happy hour networking, so you got the network and chill brand, and the network thing was good to me too. So we were networking just at happy hour. Pamela was there. There's a guy named Steve Thompson, who was the head of Johns Hopkins International at the time. And they were close. And we're talking about an opportunity where somebody called Johns Hopkins and said, hey, we need somebody to write a strategic plan to create for-profit hospitals in the big cities in China, starting in Beijing. Can you guys send me somebody to help write a strategic plan to create this chain of hospitals? And I was just there and young and energetic and excited and willing to do anything, and I said that sounds like an amazing opportunity. If you guys would consider somebody as young and inexperienced as me, I'd love to talk about it. And so they ended up asking me to have a conversation with the guy in China who's actually Canadian. He was a Rhodes Scholar, PhD in economics from Harvard. Super smart guy, was an entrepreneur himself, but did not have healthcare experience. He's more of a tech entrepreneur, actually. But his wife was a physician at the hospital, and the CEO had left, and they asked this guy, Andrew, to be the interim CEO. And he was just looking for support and help, and literally went online to see who the number one hospital in the world is. And Johns Hopkins was number one at the time in U.S. News and World Report. And so that's how it happened. But ended up having a couple calls with him, and he was like, yeah, come on over. And just literally packed up and went over there and started the journey.
Wow.
Man, that's
Yep.
really cool. Really good, cool to hear, and just a great, like I said, background and healthcare and just operational leadership. So, what was that moment? Like, like you're traveling international, working some of the top healthcares in the country. What gave you the itch to go out and start your own company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the China thing actually helped because when I went over there, we wrote the strategic plan in Beijing, and then Andrew asked me to go to Shanghai to implement or open the first international standards hospital in Shanghai, and it was just a handful of people. I was kind of leading the project and putting it all together, and we had to hire a bunch of people, and it was a very, very busy, crazy, wild ride. That's just like entrepreneurship. I mean, it was entrepreneurship. It just was inside an organization. So it was intrapreneurship is, the term is often coined. But so I went to Shanghai, and that was just trying to build. It was building and learning when you're building, and I didn't have any support there either, really. So Andrew was in Beijing, I was in Shanghai. He would pass through once a month or so, but that was about it. So just kind of had to figure it out, and that's what I think entrepreneurship is all about: is just figuring it out and believing that you can, and having enough energy to continue on when things are rough. And there were lots and lots of challenges, and we had like construction crews walk off the job and demand more money and wouldn't come back, and we had to restructure agreements to be able to get a certain amount of work done by Friday, and then they would get paid and come back the next week. And it was a crazy experience, but teaches you resolve and teaches that you can figure things out and do things that are hard.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, navigating Shanghai. I don't know if you spoke any like Chinese or Mandarin before going there, but I can only imagine.
I'm a Kentucky boy. I don't speak Mandarin, but I got to learn. So I took class an hour a day. I had private lessons for an hour a day while I was there, not before, but while I was there, and got to the point where I could get around in a cab and order food at restaurants and engage with folks who are local. But it was a long time ago. So this is 20 years ago. This is in 2004. So this is before Google Maps on your phone. This is before just being able to use Google Translate whenever you want. You actually had to speak a little bit, and you had to get around. They had this app called Guanxi, and Guanxi means relationships in Mandarin. But Guanxi, you could basically type in an address in English and you text it, and then it would text you back the location of where you're trying to go in Chinese characters, and then you could show the cab driver the location, and then they would go to the location. But some drivers were more tolerant than others. Sometimes I remember one time getting dropped off in the middle of nowhere in the city and didn't have any idea where I was because there was no map. And the driver was like, "Just get out." He like was frustrated because I couldn't speak Mandarin very well. This is very early on, and I was just like standing in the middle of the city trying to figure out what to do next. And there weren't that many cabs around, and so I had to walk for a while to find somebody to pick me up and take me somewhere else. But anyway, those are the in between times. Not just the work stuff, but just trying to live. That's
Yeah.
also a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, man,
mean,
I could
many,
imagine.
like
Okay.
many times in entrepreneurship, you don't know your destination, right? Many times it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere, and like I don't know where to go. Who's going to help me to my next route and where I'm going now? So, I mean, I think some of those parallels go hand in hand.
Yeah, take the next step, right? If you don't know where you're going, take a step in a direction and get some feedback and figure out, what you need to do next, and open one door, and that door leads you to the next door, and exactly, and those parallels are real. So it's a good framework for sure.
Yeah,
So,
man. So you're working as an executive, in the healthcare system, right before you started Handle. What was that, big insight that led you to, start the company?
I think it's a mix of things. I think part of it was the itch, because I'd already done something that was very entrepreneurial, doing the China thing, and just watching that growth. And we went from 5 or 6 people to hundreds of people in 9 months or so. So just feeling that energy and all that, that's kind of intoxicating, and you want to do it again. So that's fun, and had always been in the back of my mind. But the hospital administration thing was great for me. I learned a ton. People treated me really well. It was some great cultures, and was moving pretty quickly through the ranks or whatever. And but the itch was part of it, and then saw some opportunities and saw some challenges inside of health systems. Learned a lot about the capital world when I was inside of health systems, and also learned about supply chain, and saw that there were lots of opportunities to improve it. It was kind of an area that was in the basement of hospitals and didn't get as much respect as it probably should have, because it was a huge part of the spend. Labor is number one in hospitals, but supply chain is very close to the labor line. So labor line's 50-55%. Supply chain can be 35% of spend. So just it needed some help, and saw some specific things that happened around surplus inventory and excess equipment, and so we wanted to clean up that whole market. That secondary market was not well organized, and so the business really started there to focus on organizing the secondary market. And then as we went through building a marketplace, we started to see the importance of data and how we didn't want to just be a receiver on the marketplace of decisions that were made. We wanted to be able to help make better decisions, and so started talking about data and working with some health systems that were really progressive, that had vision for what data could do for them and help them from an intelligence perspective. And then, we got lucky. Everybody says that to grow a company from an entrepreneurial perspective, you got to have at least one miracle, and we probably had a few. COVID was a big one for us. We were working on the marketplace side, had some early thoughts about the data side, and trying to do some things around capital spend management, which then became capital cycle management. And then as COVID happened, we got a contract with the government to do some interesting things with the VA. And as we did that, then we got some data and worked with them on kind of organizing movement of assets. And in parallel, we're building capital cycle management. And as we built capital cycle management, we had some health systems that were early adopters and innovators, and collaborated with us to build a platform that started out as just visualization, and then we added layer after layer after layer to ultimately become a truly enterprise solution, and really the first operating system for capital, as we described before. There have been lots of solutions that were kind of vertical solutions that were pieces of what needs to happen from a capital planning and budgeting and asset management perspective, but there's really never been true connectivity of all of those vertical solutions. So no horizontal platform that connected them all, or second skin. And so that's what we built, is the kind of that second skin to grab data from different places, put it all together, help with the process elements around decision making, but make sure that underpinning of data is clean and normalized. And a lot of that is our special sauce, is being able to build data models that help drive really great decisions.
Super interesting, man. And I think, like you mentioned, like every good idea company, you need a bit of luck. And I felt like during COVID, like you guys kind of exploded in a sense. At least I felt like I saw you all everywhere during that time, from, like you said, VA, statewide government here and locally, and also through like networks like Endeavor and Jackson Andrews as well, just speaking highly what you all were doing. And from there, like, how have you carried that momentum from, like that market timing in 2020 to now in development? And then, how you foresee, continuing to grow in the company and, being based in Louisville, Kentucky, right? Because many times people think you can't build a great company here. You need other things in your, you need a bigger city. But I've seen you raise capital outside of the market, build great networks. What are some of the key elements that allows you to continue to build the momentum, but also stay connected outside of Kentucky and building a bigger company?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, but I think in terms of the next thing, it's just all about building brick by brick, having a good foundation, hiring amazing people, listening to customers. I mean, those are all basic things that you hear everybody say, but that's kind of what we've done, is continue to follow what our customers need and where the pain points are, and continue to build solutions that make sense for them. So I think building technology companies especially is easier to do in any location now than it's ever been. Just the technology foundation is better than it's ever been in terms of just tools and how you build things together, put things together. Talent is obviously more used to being remote now. COVID helped with that a ton. You used to have to go to Silicon Valley to find enough engineers and concentration of talent to build a great company. I don't think that's the case anymore at all. There are lots of amazing companies around the country that are in every single state, and lots of small towns. And so it's about how scrappy you are and how willing you are to go network and find people and connect dots and have really high expectations and know that you want excellence and excellence only from your team and from an outcome perspective and from a service perspective and how you engage with your customers. And Louisville's been a really fertile ground for us to network and to find funding and to help connect us outside of Louisville. You mentioned Endeavor. Endeavor's been a phenomenal connectivity point for us, and Jackson Andrews and his team have been amazing, and the board members who are connected to that have been amazing, and the other technology companies that are tied to Endeavor have been great to help each other. So it's one of those things where, like, if you're in Silicon Valley and you have a significant number of companies, that's good in the sense that you're probably going to run into somebody that could be helpful, but you can also get lost in the shuffle. Here, you're a smaller group of tech companies that can leverage each other, can help each other, and investors are going to find out who you are, and you're going to find out who they are, and so navigation is just a little bit easier, and support as long as you're making strides and they believe in you and the fact that you're going to be able to execute at some point. That's a good thing, and to be in a smaller place sometimes is better. But connectivity to other places around the country, we've definitely been able to do that. We've raised money from great places. Cypress Grove Capital, you mentioned them earlier. They're our lead investor in this latest round, and they're out of Dallas, the Dallas area, and they're phenomenal. And one of the reasons why we really like them is because their model is a little different. It's not a pure equity play. Sometimes they'll do some royalty-based agreements and other things that don't dilute as much from an equity standpoint, but still provide the support you need. And they have some great companies, and they've had a really, really good track record of outcomes. There are companies they've supported. They've kind of had the Midas touch. Those companies have all really done well. And, you want to be caught in that stream, that positive stream of outcomes. And they've just been super, just nice, kind, supportive. They believe in the long term. They understand the long term. They understand that it's not linear. I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of budding entrepreneurs face, is they think that, well, I'll just do this, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this, and everything's going to be straight line and linear. And that's not the case ever, right? It's always going to be jagged. You're going to have stuff go well, or you're going to do really well and think you're on top of the world. You're going to have things that go really poorly, and you're going to think it's never going to work. And you've just got to kind of saw off the peaks and the valleys and realize that if you believe and you're surrounding yourself with a great team, and you make sure you take care of yourself from an energy standpoint to be able to deal with it, things are going to be fine.
Yeah, man. So you talked about the team there, and I happen, Chris and I always talk about, athletes making great entrepreneurs. Yeah. And I feel like you, as a former college basketball player, kind of take it with that same competitive nature. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how you have turned that competitive nature from, your sport into entrepreneurship, and then how you built your team with that in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think competition and athletes in general are they go really, really well with business because business is competitive. I mean, you're trying to win, you're trying to do well. You've got a scoreboard, and that scoreboard comes in the same kind of vein as sports. You got metrics from an operational perspective. You got revenue growth. You got all those things, and those only happen, out of intensity and sustained intensity, and that's what you have to have in the sports world, right? You can't just train once and feel like, oh, I'm going to be a good basketball player. You got to train every day and stack days, and build the winning muscle and understanding how to deal with setbacks in a season, or setbacks in a game, or setbacks in a possession. All those kind of things matter, but you're going to face the same thing in entrepreneurship. In the business world, you're going to have setbacks, and you're going to have to respond really, really quickly. I mean, you think about the vision of, like, if you're into basketball, you think about, like, a turnover and then LeBron coming from behind with a chase down block. It's not about the turnover. It's about what you do right after the turnover. Are you going to respond quickly, or are you going to sulk? And I think athletes are good at that because they know what failure is like. If you can use any sport you want, whether it's baseball, failing 70% of the time, and you being a 300 hitter, and you're now going to make $300 million and be in the Hall of Fame, right? And Basketball is the same way. Steph Curry's the best shooter in the world, and he misses 60% of his threes, right? So he makes 40%, but he misses 60%. So most of the time when he shoots it and you're watching him play, you think he's going to make it, but the odds are he's going to miss, right? And he's going to maybe shoot an air ball because he tries to get it out quick over a 7-footer that switched on a pick and roll, and he's going to come back and shoot it again the next time, not even think about it. So it's that positivity and that mindset. Mindset's everything. And I think the reason why athletes gravitate towards entrepreneurship is because it's a challenge, because they have to build and do something that requires the same things that they had to do when they had to build, their abilities and skills in the sports world. So we've hired a ton of athletes. Like our team is comprised of a bunch of athletes. We got lucky where we hired like a really good golfer from Bellarmine, and then he hired some more golfer buddies from Bellarmine, and they all got along and hanging out in one area. We called it the bullpen because they're just kind of hanging out in the bullpen and liked it. And then we hired also early on, we hired an operations person who was a 4-time All-American in soccer, and she played at a school up in Ohio and just super competitive and only wants excellence. And we hired a guy who pitched for a Big Ten school and baseball, and we just hired a bunch of athletes, and we think that those athletes have a unique perspective on being able to deal with adversity and being able to compete at a high level and understand what playing hard really means. Like there's difference between playing hard or working hard and competing. And competing is just a different level. It's a different level of intensity, and it's kind of the difference between like B players and A players. B players don't even recognize A players because they've never done it before. They've never worked that hard. They've never executed that well. But A players understand what it takes, and so athletes, I think, are more in line with that thought process.
Man, I fully agree with everything you just said. And I think even one thing on top of that you didn't mention is discipline, right? Like to be a college athlete, you got to have discipline and resilience. So my question for you, Kyle, is like maybe for the entrepreneurs out there who aren't athletes, right? Do you have advice for them to maybe how to cultivate that resiliency, how to hire the same kind of way? What other ways have you cultivated your mindset as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, resilience goes back to the mindset thing. I think some entrepreneurs have gotten super lucky, or people have gotten super lucky where they buy some Bitcoin when it's really low, and all of a sudden they make a ton of money and they can call it a day. But that's not the case for 99% of people, right? It's gonna take longer than you think it is. It's gonna take more money than you think it is. It's gonna be more painful than you think it is. And so resilience is going to have to be the thing that carries you through. And I think, honestly, just being stretched and feeling challenged and being able to deal with that and have some success and build confidence that you can do it again is really important. And so when I'm interviewing people, I always ask them, what's the biggest piece of adversity you've ever faced? And if somebody tells me that, they had a hard time deciding what to eat last week when they went out to a restaurant, then they're probably not for me. But if they told me they had, pediatric cancer and they got through it and they figured it out, and now they're able to navigate the world in a different way because they have better perspective, that's the kind of person I want to hire. Or somebody who's been an athlete, or somebody who's just gone through things that have been tough. That's what we want. We want people who understand that it is jagged, that things are going to be a little bit hard sometimes, and they're not going to fold. But the resilience part is hiring for people who have a positive mentality, have a service orientation for customers. That service orientation also means that they're probably going to treat their coworkers correctly, and so our culture is going to be good. So just having all those things up front in the beginning and make sure they're wired the right way, and then you can build that resilience by giving people stretch assignments. And we've had people who are young, and we've let them kind of go within some guardrails, but let them really develop and stumble a little bit. But then they figure it out and not hold their hand the whole time either, like show them the way a little bit, show them kind of what you want good to look like, and then let them, do the demo themselves, let them structure the deal themselves, let them coordinate the logistics themselves, the things that could have an error, but they got to figure it out, and they'll mess it up a little bit, but they'll figure it out, and then they'll grow, and then they'll get confidence, and then over time they're going to be the leaders in your organization instead of the newbies. So we've got a lot of people who've done that, and that's like one of the most prideful moments as an entrepreneur, is like watching people grow within your company and having them support each other and understand that they can do hard things.
Man, speaking on growth, so like, I mean, your company, like as Chris said early on, has grown tremendously since, 2020. How do you manage that growth and that, like pace of growth? I mean, you all, I mean, raising 8.5 million here and, previously raising, close to 4 million or so. So how do you manage that growth and that pace? I feel like as an athlete, we want to go, 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 go as fast as we can. Sometimes we
Yeah,
just,
yeah. Managing pace is hard. It's one of the toughest things. I think as you manage pace, you got to have leverage, and to create leverage, you got to make sure that like systems and processes start getting put in place, so you don't get over your skis too much from that perspective. You're measuring the right things. You're hiring the right people, obviously, so you can delegate. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't let go soon enough,
Mm.
and don't let go on the right things. And I think that's a challenge, and stuff that I've definitely learned and grown from is some things you need to let go of and let other people do, and then some things you need to hold on to because you probably are the best person to do that as the founder. So, yeah, I mean the growth thing and the pace thing, it's an art more than it is a science. Sometimes I think sometimes investors and other folks who are a little bit maybe more linear thinkers might think that this is an equation. It has to happen this exact way. Sometimes it's a feel, and sometimes things are more spatial, and there are lots of interconnected parts. And you might want to grow a little bit faster here and slow down a little bit there, and priorities might need to shift a little bit, and the story needs to shift a little bit from a go-to-market perspective, and marketing needs to think about things differently. Like everything from in the way my brain works anyway, like it's all kind of out there, but it's interconnected, and you've got to figure out which levers to pull and which ones to pull at what time. Um, so the raising money and all that kind of stuff is trying to raise money at the right time when you need it, but at the same time you're going to raise enough where you have a little cushion to be able to experiment and to stumble a little bit, and to be able to kind of grow into the things that you're setting up as a foundation. And we've built some really interesting tools and solutions that are taking time to cultivate and grow, and that's okay. I mean, we know that's the case, and we know the sales cycles are long in healthcare, but the growth capital that we have and the team that we have, we know it's going to set us up for success. But the pace thing is a lot of feel, I think.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense having Phil, and I think even have this conversation, Kai. You're talking about how you're cultivating talent. It also speaks to just leadership in general. Because many times, Ricky and I have these conversations of people like, I can't find talent in Kentucky. I can't find talent in Louisville, right? And many times we're saying like, how are you taking the training wheels out and cultivating talent, giving people the opportunity to grow and develop? So when you mentioned that, I was like, I was just shaking my head like in agreement because I think many times we lack the ability to see the talent and give them the opportunity to grow into the talent we want to see.
Yeah, and I think if we tie some of these concepts together we talked about today, if you go back to the athlete thing or sports, as I've gotten older and less athletic, I've decided to go into coaching a little bit more, and so the coaching thing is really really applicable to talent development.
Yeah.
And I think even if you go back to like sports analogy again, like if you're building a travel basketball team, sometimes you'll have a coach who's like, I can take that raw talent, I can develop them, I can turn them into something, I can connect these pieces and parts together, we can create a team that fits together and is able to be successful. And so that's a development oriented coach, right? And then some other coaches are like, no, I'm just going to go get that kid, and that kid who are already really good, and I'm going to hope that maybe I can build some chemistry, but I know that I'm really more of a GM. A GM or a general manager is just like finding the best talent and then hoping they work out. The coach will say, well, I see some potential in these kids. I'm going to develop that potential and help grow those kids. And I think in our company, we've done a mix, right? I mean, obviously we go try to find really great talent, especially in high level leadership roles. We've recruited some people from, outside the area and who've been around and done some wonderful things. And then some of the younger folks, we've said, I see potential in that person, and I want to grow and develop that person, and I'm going to coach them. And so that's I think underappreciated and probably underdone in Kentucky and other places too. It's just like there's talent here. You just got to find them, grab them, groom them, help them. And we do some unique things too. Like we do a cognitive test We do a personality test. We make sure that the person's a fit from a culture perspective, but also has raw intellectual horsepower. Because if somebody has raw intellectual horsepower, we can train them and teach them the content. But it's like, we're in Kentucky where there are a lot of horse people, right? So if you're training a horse, like you can slow a horse down when they're kind of wild, but you can't ever speed them up. And so what we want to do is we want to find people who are already built with like raw horsepower, and we'll figure out how to channel them correctly. But we're never going to be able to find somebody who just doesn't give effort and doesn't have the intellectual horsepower. They're never going to get to where you want to get them. They're never going to be an A player. And so we want to make sure that they're built for that potential, and then we'll grow.
I mean, I love that. I think grooming talent is one of those keys as a CEO and as a leader in any company. And I think that oftentimes the most talented folks, they're overzealous and they're ready to go, kind of like you said. So you have to give them, some leeway. Otherwise, they're going to be gone. So I think that that's one of the things that I try to do within our company is, give those folks that want to go leeway to go and grow. And that, sparks so much innovation within your company and so much that entrepreneurship that you kind of talked about that you got the opportunity to, experience early on in your career. Providing that for others is one of the best joys of being a founder, I'd say. So what's next for Handle? You all, closed your round at the end of, last year. What's next? How are you? What's the plans for the next iteration of the CCM platform?
Yeah, I mean, there's the go-to-market fit part of making sure that the product market fit that you've figured out, and how do you take that and bring it to scale. So we've got a bunch of big health systems where the sales cycle is really long, but really, really big opportunities there. And so those are going to continue to go. And a lot of those are on the brink of breakthrough and happening. And then also building business models where you can get to the middle of the bell curve, right? So not just early adopters and sort of the bigger whale hunting activities, but the middle of that bell curve where it's most hospitals and what's the right model for those folks. And so we've done some things to like modularize our technology and be able to offer things that are a little bit down market, that are less expensive but super sophisticated because we built the right data models. And we want to be able to go kind of fast and go big from a scale perspective. And so that's kind of one of the big next things for us on the go-to-market side. And then on the technology front, I mean, that's where a lot of the investment is going, is into technology, so R&D and building some really interesting like conversational AI that sits on top of a large language model. And so that large language model is kind of a niche large language model for medical capital equipment and infrastructure equipment like boilers, chillers, HVAC units, that kind of stuff. So anything that's expensive inside of a health system, that's all going into a very large data set now. And so to be able to extract information from that and to drive really great decisions and intelligence from that, with a simplicity layer on top from a user perspective, that's more like you'd use ChatGPT, where you sit on top of a big data set and you ask questions and you're able to contextualize the answers and see kind of related things that maybe didn't seem like they were related on the surface, or were very difficult to go get on an individual basis if you're just doing individual searches. Instead of doing that, we're contextualizing it to help people understand what the right decision really is when you include lots and lots and lots of different factors. So that's kind of where we're going, is being able to drive a different user experience that sits on top of a big data model, and help folks be the experts that they want to be without all the effort from an analytical perspective and spreadsheet jockeying that they're doing right now. So the future for us, I mean, we want to be the go-to brand for capital and healthcare. When people think about high dollar items and think about how do I make decisions, how do I clean data, what do I do from a process standpoint, we just want them to think of us, right? So that's the kind of, when you're making progress, is when people start telling each other about you, and you start getting a lot of inbound, and we're starting to get that, which is awesome. And then internally, I think the next thing for us is just a continuation of culture development, and we want this to be the best job they've ever had. If they stay here for a long time, if they leave and go somewhere else, we want them to think about this being the best job they ever had.
Yeah, no, man. I think from so I actually am the infrastructure chair for MSD here, and we've been working on our asset management plan, for the last, 5 years, as long as I've been on the board. And it's been really interesting. I was thinking about your platform and thinking about things that, we've been doing with our inventory and putting together our asset management plan. I'm like, man, there's some opportunities, I see similarities within the field there. So it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we started, in healthcare because that's where we were and what we know. And as we're getting to the point where we're moving horizontally within healthcare, outside of just the clinical assets, we're getting into non-clinical assets. You can definitely see potential in the industries that are outside of healthcare, because there aren't very many organizations that do asset management super well. So it's a good thing our name is Handle, because we can just move outside of healthcare when the timing's right.
When the time's right, man. I love that. I love where you're going, where you're headed. And as we close out, I kind of just want to leave you with this one question for maybe up and coming entrepreneurs. You mentioned earlier on, like, how networking and building strong relationships has been so important throughout your career. And many times entrepreneurs want to go in their room, to go in their garage, hide out, go in their bunkers and do the work. What advice would you say to those kind of entrepreneurs, the importance of getting out, or even tactics of for them to get out their comfort zone and start networking and building relationships?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it a little bit, but you don't need to overthink. You don't need to overplan. If you've got an area that you're passionate about or you think is a major problem, go test it. Go talk to people about what their pain points are. Go provide some sort of solution, even if it's consulting in the beginning or light technology in the beginning, and let them pull you into kind of the next layer of an answer, and to make the thing bigger and better. And then look for the right hill to climb too, I think is an important framework, and others have talked about it. But sometimes industries are just really, really challenging and hard to navigate, and you just got to figure out where you can go that's a fertile hill or fertile ground. So you just got to pick the right hill to climb. So I think that's another just important thing to know if you're young. Like, what are the biggest challenges or barriers here? What are the biggest risks here? Is there a forcing function at all from a government requirement or anything else that would make somebody kind of have to do this? Is it, painkiller versus vitamins? Another good framework that lots of people talk about probably, but you want to be a painkiller. You don't really want to be a nice to have vitamin. So I think if you're young, it's just going out there and testing things, finding the right vein to try to go into, and then build a support structure around you who believe in you and will help you think through things and have already been there and done that. And, people are usually willing to share their story and share their history, so you can experience all the things that they had from a pitfall perspective before you actually have to do it yourself. So don't screw up, learn from other people's screw ups. So I think that's another thing folks can do. But always willing to help too. Like if you have other folks who want help or have interest in entrepreneurship, always happy to give them a shout.
Love it. I would love to facilitate any type of connections. And Kyle, I'd love to stay in contact with you and hopefully maybe even get a recommendation for another interview. I know your network has grown quite a bit as well, but we really appreciate you taking time today and really sharing your story, your background, and we're excited to continue to see the growth that Handle has.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me be on, guys. Appreciate it very much.
All right, take care.
Thanks, man.
Peace.
All right, have a good one.